see it again. We don't want to see it again. Hey, y'all. I always forget to take the loop off because we don't want to see that part again. I mean, it's nice. The music always gets me going. It calms my heart down. I feel like when the countdown is on and you guys just seeing the numbers up there, that you can hear my heart beating. That's how nervous I get before these podcasts. So I lean back a little bit. It's like, oh, hopefully they can't hear my heart beating in the microphone. Anyways, y'all, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining me today, you Twitchers, YouTubers, those of you who are on our Inequality Facebook page. Welcome in to the Inequality Podcast. I'm your host, and I want to say thank you again for taking the time out to be here. Housekeeping right away. When I get started, I like to let you know that as this show is going in the chat, you're going to find, if you're on Twitch, in the chat, you're going to see all of the documents, videos, anything that I use during my podcast episodes. You will see them in the Twitch chat. The links are live. You can link to them. They'll take you to where you want to go. If you're not in the Twitch chat, and you want to know what we're talking about and get a description, if you're on YouTube or on Facebook, then in the description are all of the links that I use during the show, plus all of the links and videos that I find during my research. So it's a much more extensive list if you're in the description on YouTube and on Facebook. So, and you can always go back. The great thing about that, if you're here live, thank you very much. I appreciate it. But if not, you can always go back and listen on demand on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitch too. So here we go. I keep telling myself that I'm going to take a little bit more time and not rush myself through my introduction, right? All right, so here we go. My name is Twana. I am your host. Also, Twana's Twitch. In these Twitch streets, this is the Inequality Podcast, where we aim to be that space between inequality. Our mission is to provide that place to learn, grow, shift our perspectives, share ideas, and challenge social norms in a positive way. We will work to move from having conversation to effective action right here, disrupting the complacency that we have towards inequality in one of the richest countries in the world. Every subject will be approached with an open mind and the chance to see things in a different light, and hopefully do the same for you. Being in this space means that we advocate for people to have equal opportunities to improve their lives. We begin to help others to remove their blinders while we are also removing ours, because we all have them. We need to see other people, appreciate their perspective and their journeys. My wish is that we all recognize that everyone wants and deserves the same things in life, but we have some work to do. Everyone wants to be a valuable contributor to our communities. We want to live in safe neighborhoods. We want to feel like there's no crime, thriving, and not just surviving. So this year, as you know, we are going to move past having the conversation to effective action. So today we talk about the impact of a felony conviction on the individual, on the family, on our communities. We'll have that conversation with our special guest, but we'll also celebrate Barbara Jordan today. It is National Women's History Month. As you know, every week we've been celebrating someone. So we're celebrating Barbara Jordan today because she reminds me a lot of our guest, and hopefully you'll see that too. We're also going to talk about the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Long name for what's going to happen on the 21st. This is a worldwide event, most celebrated in the UK. So we'll learn a little bit about that, because the reason why is because Ben Crump has been taking these cases to the UN. George Floyd, Tyre Nichols, he has taken that step to start taking these cases to the UN as a case of discrimination, racial discrimination here in the United States. So it's very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about that. March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. Really not connected to the topic, but still very important. I worked with some people talking about that subject. And so it's just something that I want to talk with people about, because you just never know who's walking around with a brain injury. It could be your kid, it could be you. So we're going to talk just a little bit about that. And then today is Queen Latifah's birthday. We're going to celebrate the Queen for a little bit too. I just love her. So all that stuff coming on the show today. So hopefully you will have a good time. There is something that I want to ask you. So before we get started, and we're going to start right after this, but I just have a question for you. I've been wondering how our relationships are with our neighborhood, or should I say our community organizations like NAACP, like the Urban League. I have a show that's coming up in April where I have some representatives from the NAACP coming in to have a conversation, because I want to know what they're doing. Are they keeping up, with what's happening in this world today? How do we learn more about what they're doing? Are we supporting them? Do you even know who's a member? do you have a friend or family who's a member of the NAACP? What's your opinion of them? Like all of that stuff. I want to know. So today, as we're talking, put it in the chat, but also just go to our Facebook page and let's have a conversation about that. Because before they come in, I kind of want to hear what everyone else has to say. To me, the NAACP is an old organization that, in my opinion, had not kept up with relevancy in my life, should I say. Just in my life and in my perspective. But that's me out here in the desert. There's not a whole lot of Black people out here. Maybe the NAACP just have a lot of stuff to do out here. But I just want to hear that from you. Little side note. All right. So now, without further ado, I made this wonderful. Let me just get this going. So I can introduce you to Calandra. All right. So my special guest is Calandra Revering. An experienced lawyer and justice advocate, Calandra has more than 18 years of experience in private practice representing clients in criminal defense, family law, civil and family mediation, and conducting neutral workplace employment investigations. She received her BS in sociology, minor in Africology at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, her master's is in human resource management in St. Mary's and University of Minnesota, and her JD at Mitchell Hamlin School of Law. Calandra is a familiar face in the courtroom. She has tried several high-profile criminal cases in state and federal courts and enjoys the adrenaline of jury trials, of course. Since 2002, she has continued to serve the community outside of her practice as an adjunct professor, teaching legal courses, trial skills, and master-level courses in international politics and law. She's currently in private practice in Hopkins, Minnesota. She raised her son as a single parent in St. Paul before marrying a native Minnesotan who loves snow and sports and has a beautiful blended family with 3 children, 3 grandchildren, 2 doggies, Lady and Milo. In her spare time, she travels hard because she works hard. She's proud to be a part of Minnesota history as an African-American woman in private practice. So there's a lot more that I did not say because she is just a phenomenal person and advocate. So I'm going to go ahead and say, welcome
Hey,
in, Calandra. Welcome in.
thank you. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so good.
Good, good.
Happy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. There was a lot I didn't say, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to say it yourself.
Okay.
So I'm just not sitting here talking to the people, even though, I mean, I could do that too.
All right. All right. I'll answer any questions you might have.
All right. Do you have water?
I actually do. So, I'm trying to drink more water, and I got this from IKEA.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and it's actually kind of cute. If I take it home, my husband's going to tell me stop bringing stuff in the house. So I keep it here at my desk. Yeah.
So you're joining me from work today. That's right. You had something that came up, and that's good though. I really appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah, it's been quite a busy week with trials. I
Well, that
had to
was my
brief.
next question. How are you? What was the best part of your week?
You know, um, the best part of my week was getting through some stressful cases and finally getting my brief out last night. So I left here about 7:30. So the best part was getting it done, you know, and moving on to the next thing. So yeah, it was a little bit of a rough week. I'm glad it's over. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And, I'm always hesitant to ask attorneys about, specifics about stuff. But what can you
yeah.
tell us about this rough week of yours? I'm so interested to hear.
You know, I think the roughest part about it was um knowing that my clients' rights are being violated, and they aren't being protected, and they're minorities, you know and the other side is a non-minority. So it feels good being in the fight and finding case law that's on your side, and you get an adrenaline rush, and you just knocking them down one by one by one. So yeah,
Well,
it's kind of rough.
I admire your tenacity and just your willingness to really be there for your clients. I feel like
Yeah,
we don't think about that when it comes to to
yeah.
attorneys, right? Like when we think about attorneys, we don't think good things. We just think that they're just after the money. But you are not that kind of attorney. So let's
um,
talk about how you became, I think that's a stupid word. Let me back up. Let's talk about your journey to where you are now. So that
yeah.
as a kid, where'd you grow up, all that good stuff.
Um, yeah, I was raised by well, I went to high school in Milwaukee. But I went to elementary and junior high school in Las Vegas.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
with my mother, and my parents were separated. So when it was time to go to high school, I wanted to go back to Milwaukee, and I would visit Milwaukee every summer. And my dad, um, my dad was on drugs by then, so I moved in with my grandmother, and she raised me. And we were, in a rough neighborhood. We were in 53206, which is the zip code in Milwaukee. It incarcerates more Black people than any other city in the nation, any other
Wow.
zip code in the nation. So, we did it. And, I remember times where um, we would have to get up and go buy her car back from the drug dealer, whoever my dad sold it to.
Right.
And they were elderly, but they were raising a teenager. And I knew that I wanted to become a lawyer because I would watch TV and I loved legal shows. I love Matlock and Perry Mason, and I would always wonder, where are the Black lawyers? The Black people were always defendants. And
Yeah.
growing up in that neighborhood and watching the news with my grandparents, we were always the defendants. And you would only see old white men defending Black people.
Yeah.
And I always thought, well, why can't it be me? So, um, I got pregnant at a young age, and I knew that I needed to get out of Milwaukee.
Okay.
So I moved into a one bedroom on Capitol Drive. And a few days after I moved in, there was there was a Popeyes directly across the street, and there was a woman that was killed there. Um, she had three children, and she was robbed at gunpoint and killed in front of her children. And I said, I have to get out of this state. So
Wow.
I got on the bus the next day. I went downtown to the welfare building, and we used to just call it the building on the Leach Street. And my caseworker told me, she said, you need to take advantage of every program we have out here. Everything you could take in school, take it. She said,
Yeah.
because one day all of this will change. And I said, what do you mean? She said, farewell to welfare. She said, we will pay for your child care if you go to school. but you better do it now. And I got back on the bus, Tawana, and I went and signed up at UWM Milwaukee. And I got on that bus every day, and I would take my son to daycare and I would take him to school. And I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. So um, by my junior year, I was the executive director of the University Legal Clinic.
Wow.
And we served 25,000 students. I was the first Black woman to hold that position, not only the first time, but I was the first woman to remain in that position for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And even today, from what I'm told, most of the procedures and policies that I implemented are still in
Are
place.
still in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And when I applied for law school, you know, I had the goal of wanting to stay in Milwaukee to serve my people,
Right.
but I didn't get into Marquette Law School. I didn't get into UW Madison. And when I didn't get into Madison, I called the dean and I said, well, I just want to know, why didn't you accept me? Because my GPA was high.
Right.
Um, I scored pretty well on the LSAT. And he told me, we don't believe you're ready for matriculation. And that was a blow to me. Um, so I applied to, you know, at least 10 law schools. And I applied to Minnesota. I had never even really heard of Minnesota. I knew it was
We're
a
right
state.
next door.
Right, right. But I had certainly never been here. You know, when people would hear about Minnesota, of course, before George Floyd, the first thing they would say is, they have Black people in Minnesota.
Right.
So I applied to William Mitchell, and not only did I get in, but I got a scholarship.
Oh, yes.
So that's how I ended up here.
And
And
you stayed.
and I stayed. And my mom, she came here to help me, but she came on a bet. And the bet was that I would never make it to law school. Yeah, unfortunately. You know, many people in my family believe that because I was a single parent,
Yeah.
I would never graduate. I would never make it. And when I got into law school, I had to take the letter to my grandmother's house because my mother didn't believe me.
What?
Yeah. And my grandmother said, Dolores, I guess you're moving because it's true. And she did. No question
Wow.
asked. Yeah. And she is
That's
still here
awesome.
today.
I can't wait to meet her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love that. I love that story.
Yeah.
I love that part of your story. And like
Yeah.
I know that by the time we're done with this conversation, I'm going to say this a few times, but I hope you're writing your book.
I am. I
Okay,
am. Most
good.
definitely. Most definitely. And I hope everyone enjoys reading it. I know that there are many people who are really waiting to read about my experiences here as a Black woman. And
Yes.
because even when I tell people, what has happened, they're like, that is unreal. But it's Minnesota. And, the place I come from, we're used to fighting. So
Yeah.
um, I'm not going to back down very easily. Once you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to work harder to do it. So.
That, hey, I love that in you. And it's so funny because that fight or flight mechanism is real. Like
Yeah.
the more I meet just phenomenal people in my life, and listen, you don't shake a stick at me. I'm not saying I'm not phenomenal, but I am new in my phenomenalness. I'm new in recognizing it. Let me just say
Yeah.
that, because it was always there. People see it, they saw it. I didn't see it, I didn't feel it. So I'm new to it. So the
Yeah.
facts, I love that we have powerful Black women like you. And I'm going to use that P
Well,
word
thank
so
you.
much, powerful, because that's what we need, more powerful people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
On our side, advocating for us.
Yes.
And I love
Yes.
that. Tell
Yes.
me about your time in Ramsey County because you're in private practice now.
Mhm.
But I want to hear about your time with Ramsey County, both as an attorney and running for judgeship, right?
Yeah. That was my first job as a law clerk in Ramsey County, and I worked in felony sentencing. So my job was um, to make sure the defendant received as much time as possible. And I stayed there for a year and a half. I stayed there for a little while after I graduated law school too, because
Okay.
in Minnesota you can work as a certified student attorney
I
after you
didn't know
have,
that.
yeah, after you have so many credits.
Okay.
um, your employer can notify the Supreme Court and they can give you a temporary license to practice law, which was what I was doing. Um, so I did that, and even for a little while they farmed me out to the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission to assist them in rewriting some of the criminal statutes,
Okay.
specifically on civil commitment of sex offenders. So I did that for a while, did some writing for them, and I still worked, and was still going to school and still raising my son, who is 29 today.
Oh, happy
Yes,
birthday. Oh my
yes.
goodness.
Yeah, so I've been at this over 20 years. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, it was tough working there at that time because in that entire with that entire staff, you had one black male prosecutor, and you only had one Latino, and I don't think they had any black women at that time.
Wow.
Um, George Floyd has changed a lot for Minnesota. The landscape of black lawyers who you see working in law firms, government institutions, and in private practice. So I ran for judge because um, Wilhelmina Wright was the first black female judge in Ramsey County, and that
Okay.
was in 2000, I believe.
Okay.
She's the only black judge to have presided in all courts here. So she started in district court. She then went to the Court of Appeals, then to the Supreme Court, and now she's on the federal bench.
Okay.
So I ran because between the year 2000 and 2018, no other black women had been appointed.
Wow.
So I was the first black woman to run in an election for a judicial election in
Okay.
Ramsey County. So,
Wow.
yeah.
How was the experience doing that? I've always wanted to be involved in a campaign. Like it's one of those things I've always like, how does someone get in to help someone win an election?
So, so I won the primary, which, I was very surprised. And then I ran in the general election against a sitting judge. And that process is difficult because most people, when they vote, they just check the box for incumbent. They don't really vet the candidates.
Yeah.
So I kind of went on a campaign with other candidates, and what we did was we held listening sessions, um, and that was the first time that had been done. So
Okay.
we were minority lawyers. There were two Hmong attorneys running, and one African American male, A.L. Brown, who is phenomenal. He was running for Court of Appeals.
Okay.
So a big part of this was really to educate the community on what was happening in the system, because a lot of people have never even been to the courthouse. They may get a parking ticket, but
Right.
most people do not have contact with the judicial system.
Right.
And most people don't even care about the judicial system unless they're affected.
Unless they're affected. Right.
Yes. So whether it's child support, whether it's divorce, whether it's criminal, they really don't care.
Yeah.
So just think when they go to the polls, they're going to check incumbent because they're not affected. But what we found during these listening sessions, between the people that had never made contact with the system and the people who had contact with the system, there was a real interest there.
Okay.
Because even with the people that did not have contact with the judicial system, they knew someone who had been affected. So that really piqued their interest too. So I got, gosh, I think it was like over 20,000 or 30,000 votes, something like that. But it was great. It was
Yeah.
great. So I was really glad that it really made an impact on people, and they were happy to see a minority running for office. So, and that was before George Floyd.
Right.
So after George Floyd, I received tons of messages, emails. You should run, and I'm like, nah, no thanks. It's a lot of it's a lot of work.
I know it
It
is.
really is, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
You really have to work on soliciting donations for your campaign.
Yeah.
But it really takes a toll, being out there, you're doing parades, you're doing meet and greets, you're doing a lot. I did several judicial forums, which, my answers were great because, I was part of the system and I worked in the system. Um, so it would be very effective now. I have no doubts. If I were to run again, I would likely get on the bench, but I enjoy my freedom, and being on the bench, there's certain things you can't say,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when you're not on the bench, you can
It
be
might
very vocal.
It's a little different now though, right? I feel like this Supreme Court, they just change everything about justices, I feel.
Yeah, yeah. But in district court here, being a Black person, the standard is different for us.
It is.
You know,
Yeah.
just look at our presidents. You know,
Yeah.
Barack could never do things that Trump did. Never.
Yep. Never.
Yeah, it's
He couldn't even wear white pants. Is it
That's
white
right.
or are they tan? I can't remember.
That's right. That's right.
Like, what is that really the deal?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's really interesting when you say that most people just kind of hit incumbent when it comes to voting for
Yes.
judges, or just kind of go down party lines and picks. But I found that it was really important to go back and do some research before I
Mhm.
voted on my judges because of that. Like, we
Yeah.
need to know who's doing what and then I wanted to know who appointed them. Like, I want to know who appointed them, everything, because that's how I made my decision about who I was going to vote for. But
Yeah.
I feel like we're not connected to our local politics enough.
Yes.
We're worried about the every 4-year vote and not worried about what's happening right here in our cities and our counties. And so I'm hoping that we can, change that a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the issues I've been dealing with this week too. One of the news channels is they're doing a special investigation on kids who have been found incompetent in court, but they've been released to their parents or no longer incarcerated, and they commit more crimes. So, with one of the cities, they're seeking to talk to the mayor about how he's going to address these types of issues in his city and dealing with the
Okay.
crime that's very high in the city. I just don't want to, because it's a special investigation report that they're doing.
Right.
So next week they'll be using some of my office space to talk to one of the families, probably, more than likely to talk to me about, my thoughts because I live in that city that
Okay.
they're kind of talking about.
Okay.
Um, but the crime, and I'm sure we'll get into it, talking
Mm-hmm.
about the crime um, and dealing with the guns. Um, there's things with the guns that I think that the public really needs to know a lot about. So,
I just learned the term ghost guns today.
yes, exact. That's one of them.
Like what the what?
Yeah,
Yeah. And I just
and
learned it
switches.
today.
Yes, and switches. You know what switches are, right?
I don't know what a switch is, except
Oh,
for when my grandma used to send me outside to get one off the tree. There's another switch.
yeah. So ghost guns um, are a huge problem right now. Even just last night in my neighborhood, um, I literally heard like 20 shots in very, very fast. And I sat up in bed and I'm thinking, what is that? I mean, it was pop, 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 pop. Um, but ghost guns are a huge problem. Um, but a switch is a mechanism that is attached to the gun to turn the gun into an automatic, and it shoots
Oh,
faster. Yes,
okay.
yes. Switches are a huge problem.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that okay? So now that you mention it, I feel like is that what the shooter in Vegas used? Did he have one of those on one of his guns? I feel like maybe somewhere it
Um,
was in the story of one of the shootings.
I can't recall, but I know in a lot of shootings you see here, um, they the kids are using switches. And when
Okay.
I say kids, I'm talking about from the ages of 14 to, let's say, 25. Um, the other thing they're doing is they're making their own guns, and those guns don't have a serial number.
Yeah. That's the ghost gun.
Yes.
Yeah. Y- Again, I don't understand. Like my brain cannot even I can't even wrap my brain around the concept of allowing ghost guns
Hmm.
to happen, to
And
be
switches, yes.
and
It's
switches. Like
just imagine a ghost gun and a switch together. Yeah. Untraceable, and it shoots even faster, faster and more bullets.
and more bullets.
Mhm.
All right. And see, I feel all right, let me get the conversation back on track here. I want to say welcome in everyone. We've been talking for a little while, so let me just say hi. My name is Twana, Twana's Twitch, and today I'm talking with Calandra Revering, and we're talking about the impact of a felony. I feel like if we don't know someone in our family, then we know someone. We're like 1 degree separated, right, from someone who has a felony. So we're talking about what that means to the individual, to the family, to the community, and we're going to dig into that conversation here in just a minute. I want to just ask the chat, and I don't know how many people are looking. It doesn't my screen's not working over here, so I just want to know: do you have anyone in your family, or if you know anyone who has a felony record, do they talk to you about their situation? Do they confide in you about their struggles? Are they struggling? Maybe they're not. We can't assume that everyone with a felony struggles, but we want to have that conversation today. So if you're in the chat, make sure that you join the conversation. We definitely want to make sure that you're a part of it. And then again, wherever you are. I would just appreciate it if you would like, share, subscribe. It'll help me. And because I'm not on here on the same time every week, and sometimes I'm on another days, then you need to be able to get notified when I am going live. So I appreciate your support. All right. So I've had this book for a while.
Mhm.
In my brain, Michelle Alexander was going to come on my little podcast. And hey, one day it might still happen. But I have the next best thing in you right here with me today. So this year, I kind of want to make sure that when we're talking about these conversations, that we're connecting our present to the past and then thinking about what our future would look like, right? In these circumstances. So the new Jim Crow to me, and this is the 10th anniversary version. So there's the introduction, there's like a big introduction that updates you on everything that's happened since 2010 when the original copy came out. But there are just a couple of things in here I want to point out to guide our conversation to talking about felonies, especially in the present. All right, are you with me?
I am. I actually have that book, and it was signed by Michelle Alexander. It's on my coffee table at home. Yes.
See, when I say that I have the next best thing, I mean it, y'all. So you don't know, like I get goosebumps, and when I tell you I'm honored that you're here with
Thank
me
you.
today, I just really am.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
right,
so
so
much.
the 13th Amendment, which is how I heard about this book, watching the documentary 13th, right?
Mhm.
The McCleskey decision, the beginning of crime and policing and all that stuff, right? Like we don't really think about as we clutch our pearls every time a cop kills someone in our community. It's like
Yeah.
that's what police did all the time. That's
Yeah.
why they were created. That's been the relationship with the Black community since its creation. Oh, we
Yes.
seem to forget, or are they just not teaching us that?
I think um, they aren't teaching us that because they don't think it's relevant. They don't think it's who cares. You know, they don't see us as people, first of all. And I mean Black people. They don't see us. And this has been going on for a very long time. When I was in law school, I wrote my long paper on the history of a felony. Now,
Okay.
all of my professors were white, of course.
Of course.
I graduated from William Mitchell. We had one Black professor in the whole school.
In the whole
And
school?
yeah, yeah. And I got a C on my paper. I can guarantee you, if I were to write that paper today, I would get an A. And my professor asked me, why would I pick that topic? Why should I even have to explain? But um, the
Hmm.
paper was about 30 pages. And I went all the way back to when our forefathers uh, began writing criminal statutes and how they constructed a felony.
Hmm.
So the felony, um, the way it kind of morphed was it was actually structured around crimes mainly committed by Black people. So crimes like loitering, um, public drunkenness, those were considered felonies, whereas other crimes like assault and things mainly committed by white people were typically treated as misdemeanors. But as white people started committing more crimes, those were then labeled as misdemeanors. And as Black people who were poor and who committed crimes like theft, um, drug crimes, then those became felonies. It was
Yeah.
completely structured around race.
Homelessness was a crime.
Homelessness was,
They called it vagrancy, I think. But yeah.
yeah. And at one point, if more Black people did it, it now changed to a felony.
Yeah.
And when you have these crimes that are structured as felonies, whether they are what we would consider low level, very minor, you found that more Black people had felonies. So what you then saw was, how can we use this to restrict voting, to restrict housing, and to restrict employment? So what you then had is more white people were employed because their records were clean,
Right.
or they had misdemeanors. Even when we look at voting, you have more Black people who were restricted from voting. I mean, look, voting, Black people were able to vote, what, 1965?
It's
You
still
know,
pretty new to us.
it's still pretty new. So when you have Black people who are unemployed, they're unable to vote, so they have no say in who takes office. Guess what? They're going to be homeless.
Yeah.
They may steal just to eat.
Yep.
They may resort to dealing drugs, or, even petty things like selling food on the street. Now they're selling food on the street, but they have a felony.
Right.
So in turn, that also flows into purchasing homes. Look at the home ownership rates.
Yes.
So why don't Black people purchase home? Well, you have credit issues, which we already know.
Yep.
That no matter what
Yes.
your credit looks like,
It doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. I mean,
Mm-mm.
just as a side note, look at that case that was just settled last week with the Black family who sued the appraiser, who
Yes.
appraised their house for $500 less
A
because they
half
had
$1 million.
$500,000
That
less.
ain't nothing that you just gonna pass over on the sidewalk.
Right. But once they changed their house to have pictures of white families,
Yeah.
and they had one of their white friends stand in as them, their house praised for $500,000 more.
Crazy.
That case settled last week. Yes.
And as it should.
As it should. Yeah. So when you look at how the felony conviction has had an impact on
Yes.
the economic status of Black people, and mind you, what do they say? The pathway to wealth is home ownership.
That's what they say.
When you look at the impact that has had,
Yeah,
on Black people, and just look at the politicians in office, how did they get there without the voice of Black people?
yeah.
And we're talking about a long time ago. What we are
Right.
doing now is we are still trying to undo those wrongs that have been imposed on our people. And a lot of it starts from the felony. And it's
Yeah.
generational. It's generational.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out of poverty. If your
Yes.
children, if they've been raised in poverty, now
Mhm.
they have to struggle to get out. You know why? Because they may not have even seen the inside of a college.
Right.
They don't know what it's like to have a parent who has made a trust fund for them, or
Yeah.
who can pay for their education. They may have multiple siblings at home, and their parents, if they're still together,
Yeah.
because we're not going to even go into the division of the Black family. Okay.
Yes.
But you get my point.
Yeah. There is so much. And what discourages me is that the more I dig into history
Mhm.
and learn about how we got here, nothing seems to be changing. I feel like,
Mhm.
as I think it was Malcolm X said that the middle class turned their backs on the Black community a long time ago. Like
Mhm.
when you're Black, getting out of where you came from is
Yeah.
usually how you measure your success. And
Yeah.
so how do you how do you remain connected so that you continue to bring people with you? That's
Yeah.
that's the challenge, right? Instead of
Mhm.
being crabs in a barrel, we need to be more like ants. I say that all the time. We need to be more like ants so that everyone makes it. Everyone
Yeah.
makes
Yeah. Even, when we look back at crack cocaine versus powder cocaine, look at how that impacted the Black community.
Yeah.
Even when I talked about moving back to Milwaukee and my father was on drugs, let me tell you, growing up, Milwaukee was a blue collar community.
Right.
You had A.O. Smith, you had breweries,
Laverne
that
and Shirley. That's like what I think
Laverne and
about
Shirley.
Milwaukee.
Yes. And you know what happened? One of the downfalls of Milwaukee, crack cocaine.
Yeah.
My dad drove a cab. He worked in a bar and he went to school. He went to UW Milwaukee. And when I would visit in the summertime, he would take me to school with him. And I can remember sitting in a desk next to him, and my feet were too short to touch the floor. And I never forgot it. That is why I knew when I became a single parent, my only go to was I need to go to school. And when my father was on crack cocaine and he finally got cleaned up, you know how I found out he got clean?
How?
Because one day I'm sitting up in my office in the third floor uh, in the Commons. It's this huge building at UW Milwaukee. I'm sitting in my office, and one of the students came in, and they started talking about this guy who looked homeless, who was down at the school restaurant area playing chess, and no one could beat him. Now, my dad was a Midwest chess champion, and I
Okay.
hadn't seen him in a few years. So I said, "What does he look like?" So they're describing him, and they say he's got a backpack like he's a student. It's a black guy with a beard. He plays down there all the time, but nobody can beat him. So I got it from my desk and I went down there, and it was my dad.
It was your dad.
Mhm.
Oh.
And I talked to him, and he met my son a few weeks later. And my dad and I graduated a semester apart. So,
Ashe, Dad.
yeah. And
Ashe.
when I went to law school, he went back and he got his master's degree, and we again graduated a semester apart. And he worked for the state of Minnesota, the state of Wisconsin, and he was one of the directors of vocational rehab. And he retired a few years ago. But I tell you that to talk about what crack cocaine did to a blue collar community of Black people who all they wanted to do was work and take care of their families.
Yeah.
Um, Very strong work ethics um, and values,
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
values.
And that was very intentional. And it
Yeah,
wasn't just Milwaukee. It was all
right.
over the country.
It
That
was all
there's
over.
one thing that like if we don't pay attention to history, we're not going to understand. That's why
Hmm.
the whole Black Lives Matter movement, George Floyd, things are looking really good now. Right? But
Yeah.
I am waiting for how they're going to counter this. Now, I already feel it coming, with the CRT. And as a matter of fact, my opinion is they're allowing us to take all these statues down
Yes.
for a
Yes.
reason. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like all of this is happening for a reason. They are moving intentionally. And we don't pay attention to their movements
No.
enough to
No, we don't.
understand this is a playbook, y'all.
Yeah.
This is a playbook. So let
Hmm.
me let me go back. I want to talk about this because I don't know how many people have even paid attention to what the 13th Amendment says. So I want to get into this constitutional segment with you real quick because I know you'll be able to break it down for us, right?
Okay.
So I've got the lovely little 13th Amendment up here so we can read it together. All
Mhm.
right. It's not very long, as with most of the amendments in the Constitution, except for there are a few that are kind of, cumbersome. But the 13th Amendment is very simple, right, Calandra?
You would think so.
Yeah, slavery's over, except ... And that's why we're having this conversation today, because that ... is like a million dots at this point. So neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for the crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
Mhm.
So the Constitution, to me, has allowed the courts to ignore our Blackness because
Right.
the Constitution ignored our Blackness. So, and this is my opinion. You tell me if I'm onto something. But when I even look at McCleskey, right? There's a good reason to believe that, and I'm gonna let you talk about McCleskey a little bit after I finish reading this, okay?
Okay.
There is a good reason to believe that, despite appearances, the McCleskey decision was not really about the death penalty at all. And again, we can talk about what the case was in just a minute. The court's opinion was driven by a desire to immunize the entire criminal justice system from claims of racial bias. The best evidence in support of this view can be found at the end of the majority opinion, where the court states that this discretion plays a necessary role in the implementation of the criminal justice system, and that discrimination is an inevitable byproduct of discretion. Racial discrimination, the court seemed to suggest, was something that simply must be tolerated in the criminal justice system, provided no one admits to the
Mhm.
racial bias. McCleskey.
Mhm.
Man was on death row, right?
Right.
Go ahead. I'm gonna let you tell the tell the story.
Well, I don't know the whole story,
Yeah.
but um, I'm glad to see that there's been a moratorium on the death penalty in pretty much all states at this point.
Yeah.
Not all of them, most of them,
Right.
because there have been so many Black people who have been exonerated because of DNA evidence. Um, there's been so many issues around witness testimony, um, witnesses with identification, because we can look at, we don't use the lineup with, 6 people so much.
Right.
At least in Minnesota, we now use photos shown one by one by one
Okay.
because of witness identification. So
Hmm.
and Minnesota doesn't have the death penalty, but um, there have been many people who have been put on death row and who have been murdered again because of
Yeah.
um, being exonerated. Now, I don't know if you know this, but even last, just this past week, um, the man who was convicted of killing Drew Shadeen, um, the prosecution will not, and Drew Shadeen was killed like almost, 20 years ago
Right.
or 10 years ago. But that issue is still going on. And just
Wow.
last week, they decide they will not be asking for the death penalty, and he will be resentenced
Okay.
and will receive life in prison, which
Okay.
you kind of knew that would happen, but it's taken a toll on the family that it took this long for the state to make a decision about whether they were going to put him to death.
Yeah.
And she was, I don't know if you know that story. She was taken from a parking lot. I believe it was in Fargo, maybe somewhere up north.
Okay.
She was 22 or 23 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was kidnapped and killed.
Wow.
So,
So the name I know sounds very familiar.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
but I don't remember the details of the story, but the
Let
name.
me tell you why you remember that.
Okay.
You remember that because it was a white woman.
Okay.
That's why. You know,
I should have known the answer to that one
that's why.
already.
That's why. Now you and I both know when a white woman is kidnapped and killed, it is all over the media.
It is.
And and we remember that because
They say it over and over and over and
yeah,
over again.
yeah. But how many black women do you remember who have been kidnapped and killed that there was media coverage about? You don't remember because it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. And that brings up a whole nother conversation
yeah,
about our black media. I
yeah.
tweet, just noticed it today. It's like, you know what? I subscribe to all these black media, right? Afrotech, Blavity, Essence, Roland Martin, like everybody.
Mhm.
But they just give us the same news and everybody
Yeah,
else is giving us is just a black face. It's like, give me something different that
yeah,
really affects black people, please.
yeah. And black children who are being
Yes.
kidnapped. You're not gonna hear about that, but
No.
you'll hear about white children who have been kidnapped
Yep.
and then they're eventually found too.
Yeah.
But you won't hear about black children missing.
No.
So that's why you remember the name.
Yeah, I
Truth
definitely
should be
remember that name.
it's purposeful, trust me, that you remember that this wrong had been, imposed on this young woman. She was a victim.
Yeah.
We could never be victims, right?
We're too strong for victimhood. You
Yeah, and
kidding?
if we disappear, nobody cares.
She just left.
She just left.
She's a grown woman. She just left. She was tired of
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
And she's just out living her best life somewhere and
yeah, yeah. Now,
don't worry about it.
now, don't get me wrong. What happened to her was a tragedy. Don't
Yes.
get me wrong. My point is just that you remember because the media
Yeah.
covered this much more than they would a black woman.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that woman that went went on a vacation with her friends and didn't come back home. And
Yeah,
like Mexico was like, "Hey, we told your government what happened. They know who it is." And
yeah,
they're not doing anything. It's like, wait a minute. What's
yeah.
anyways?
Or, like the four friends that went to Mexico.
Yeah. That's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
you see, we haven't seen that on the news anymore, right?
No.
It was
Was it on the news? I feel like I only know about it because of Roland Martin. He reports on it.
it was on CNN,
Okay.
but you're not gonna see if it was some white people, it would have been on the news a lot more. We would still be hearing more about it today.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because nothing's happened.
Nothing's happened.
Nothing's happened. It's terrible.
Mhm.
I want to read one more thing to you from this book.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about felonies
Okay.
and what that means. Because one of the things that I got from this book is that with the big prison boom, right? Building all the prisons, all the money that everyone's friends made. Now they want to take the prisoners out of the buildings, which now what are they going to do with all the buildings? Duh. And they want to combine them into the communities now. So, hey, you're going to be convicted of this crime, but we're still going to let you go home with an ankle bracelet, maybe not be in prison. So I feel like things are evolving in the prison system. But here, the dirty little secret of policing is that the Supreme Court has actually granted the police license to discriminate. The fact is not advertised by police departments because law enforcement officials know that the public would not respond well to this fact in the era of color blindness. It is the sort of thing that is better left unsaid. Civil rights lawyers, including those litigating racial profiling cases, have been complicit in this silence, fearing that Any acknowledgement that race-based policing is authorized by law would legitimate in the public mind the very practice they are hoping to eradicate.
Mm-hmm.
Felonies can be as small as what?
Felonies can be as small as criminal damage to property over $500. So, you might have a black woman who might bust her man windows out.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Mhm.
Busting the windows and slashing tires, that would be $500.
Yeah. Yep. Um, Something like fifth degree drugs, so a very small amount of drugs. Um, and that would be the lowest level of a felony. Financial transaction card fraud. I'll
What
give
is
you
that? Like using a credit card that's not yours?
yeah, yes, and a theft of public assistance. Not reporting. You're
That's a
working
felony?
someplace. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, um, yeah. Um,
I
you
know
know,
a lot of felons.
yes, yes, and here's the thing. Someone can be charged with a felony. um let's say because here's where the real problem comes in is you will have a black person charged with a felony and a white person charged with a felony, but when it comes to resolution of the case, the offers are unequal. A black person may be offered, you can plead to the felony. You'll be on probation for a certain number of years. If you complete probation, it will go down to a misdemeanor. Whereas a white person may be offered a diversion. And a diversion, it means you pay the money back within a year and this will be dismissed. During that year, you won't have a felony conviction. So you have the inequality in
Yeah.
sentencing. So that's where you'll see a lot of the disparities with felony crimes. So here in Minnesota, let me give you an example. And it goes back to what I was talking about with my paper. So in Hennepin County, a person who's been charged first time with a felony, they will be on probation for 3 years. In Ramsey County, you will be on probation for 5 years for that same offense. So if you've been given an offer that you're going to plead to this felony, at the end of probation, should you complete probation? If it's in Hennepin County, 3 years, Ramsey County, 5 years. Should you complete probation, the offense will be reduced to a misdemeanor. Now, think about this. A presidential election cycle is every 4 years. So if you're in Ramsey County, you will not be able to vote because you've missed a presidential cycle.
Right.
Even in Hennepin, depending on when that cycle falls, you may miss it then. But just think, you will be on probation 2 years longer carrying a felony, and the counties are literally 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
It's just a bridge dividing the two counties.
Yes.
So how unequal is that? And just think, when you're talking about the impact of a felony, you're going to lose your job. And if you don't have a job, you're going to have even more problems getting a job.
Right.
If you live in an apartment building, then you're likely going to be evicted, right?
Victim. Mm-hmm.
You won't even be able to volunteer at your child's school
Wow.
because you have a felony.
Okay.
So now you're homeless, you're unemployed. And if you own a home, You're going to be unemployed, so you can't pay your mortgage, so your house is going to go into foreclosure.
Right.
And let me take it a step further. When we're talking about education, if you're convicted of a felony offense, you're not getting financial aid.
Hmm.
So now, what do you do?
Right.
So now we have extreme levels of homelessness, unemployment, and you're uneducated. So, yeah, that's an example. And it, that's one of the things I really talked about um, on the campaign trail, because people had no idea of the disparity of two counties that were right next door to each other.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like that's normal. That's what they fight for, right? To be able to, I think that's how another way how, they make draw their lines,
Yeah.
We want
It,
you people here and we want you people there.
yeah. And I'm going to add one more layer to this. Many people believe that as a juvenile, when they commit crimes, um, that when they're 18, they start with a clean slate. On on some levels, that's true,
Okay.
but when you're looking at sentencing crimes, okay, and for instance, we're talking about gun crimes, okay. So as a juvenile, if you have two felony adjudications, which is like saying two guilty pleas, two convictions in the adult world.
Right.
If you have two felony adjudications, that equals 1 point in the adult world. So when we're sentencing individuals in Minnesota, we use the sentencing guidelines, and it's on a point system. So we look at how many felony points you have in your background, and that goes on a chart. And then we look at the offense. So you could be looking at prison or you could be looking at probation, but you're still looking at a felony.
Okay.
So I'm going to take it one more step further. So if you have committed crimes as a juvenile, felony crimes, in some sense, you do start out with a clean slate in the adult world. But if you have a gun, you will be charged with felon in possession. And right off the bat, you're looking at 60 months prison,
And so
no
is
probation.
this is a gun that's not registered? An unregistered gun, that's the felony?
It could be, well, of course, it won't be registered because, you can't register as felon. But let's say you're in a car, okay?
Mhm.
And let's say your passenger had a gun under the seat, and maybe the driver saying they didn't know. They're going to be charged with felon in possession. And let's say the driver's 24 years old,
Okay.
okay? They're going to be charged with felon in possession because the gun under the seat is what's called constructive possession because it's in proximity to them.
Okay.
But that felony conviction from when they were 17 years old is going to be a problem. And
Okay.
the person's thinking, you know what? I was a juvenile. I was 17. Well, you pled to an offense that prohibited you from having a gun as an adult. And most people don't know that.
They don't know that. Because our representation, that was one of the things
Mhm.
I wanted to talk to you about as we were getting into the details of felonies, is that
Mhm.
prosecutors tend to also treat black and white defendants differently,
Yeah.
and they recommend more of our juveniles to adult court than they do white juveniles.
Yeah.
And so how does the relationship with the prosecutor, as a defending, a defending attorney, how does the
Mhm.
relationship help with that? And does it help? Like, is it just, the total discretion of the prosecutor and there's absolutely nothing anyone can do?
You know, I think when we're talking about relationship with the prosecutor, I just want to let me let me clarify. So when you say relationship, are you talking about the times you've worked with this certain prosecutor?
Yeah, I mean, because
Okay.
like we started before, most of us
Uh-huh.
we don't have experience with the courts, so I only
Yeah.
know what I see on TV,
Yeah.
and the both sides always seem very chummy, and I don't know if that's just for TV or if that's how it is in reality. Like both sides seem to be very chummy, especially if you happen to have a public defender, because growing up that for me, that was always a public offender. We never called them a public defender. They
Yeah.
were the public offenders because they didn't really do anything to help you.
Yeah. I think that when people see the defense attorney and the prosecutor maybe laughing together or talking, they think that, all right, you're talking to the enemy. So this isn't good. What people have to understand is that lawyers are advocates for their clients. So whether a prosecution works for the state, they're an advocate for the state. Or if you're a defense attorney, you're an advocate for your client. And we are going to do our jobs, but it's not going to be adversarial to the point where we can't be unprofessional with each other. That's professionalism, you know. It's not going to take away from what we're doing for our client.
Okay.
We have to have a relationship with the prosecutor because we're going to see them. You
Yeah.
know, we may even see them at happy hour with other lawyers because it's part of the profession.
Right.
But we are going to do our jobs, but not at the sake of being unprofessional
Right.
to keep our client happy. Yes, and I'll tell you personally, you may see me make a joke with a prosecutor because they may be my Facebook friend, or we may have gone to school together.
Right.
But when I'm in the moment, when I'm making my argument, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking
Right.
about my client. So we all know, you
Yeah.
know, um, that we're still going to do our jobs, but we're going to be respectful of each other,
Right.
you
And
know,
be professional at all times, but
be
still
professional.
not being able to leverage the relationship because I'm telling you as I read about, different cases and trials, and it's like the prosecutor really holds the power in who gets indicted under what crime. Like they could even not indict you at all. So I could have, you know, slash my boyfriend's tires and busted out
Yeah.
his windows. And the prosecutor's the one that's going to say we're going to prosecute you or we're
Yes.
not. It's
Yes.
really their discretion. So,
Yes, that is true. Because
yeah.
that's their job.
Yeah.
And I respect that because we do need prosecutors, and we equally need defense attorneys.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, whoever was shooting that gun in my neighborhood last night, I want them prosecuted,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
because we need that protection for the people, right?
But it's the bias. It's just
Hmm.
it's the bias. Like, and I have one other thing cuz like I'm telling you, when I think about who decide, like it's always the decision makers. As I said, you are powerful. You are a powerful woman. But some people have power that don't have our best interests at
No,
heart.
this is true, and I can tell you, um, I have called it out in court on multiple occasions, and I have said, you know, to the judge and the prosecutor, I just saw this white person with the same facts as my client get a hell of a deal, but this is what my client is being offered. Tell me why this is okay. Tell
Right.
me how this is equal. And, while everyone is stuttering, my client then gets the same offer that white guy got. So,
Everyone's stuttering. Stuttering.
so unfortunately, um, it happens. But
Yeah.
what I would say is the defense attorney has to be aware of these biases and be prepared to deal with them.
It-
One of my goals is to get as many Black people to law school as possible.
let's do it.
Because, yeah, one of the problems is you don't see too many of me's. And if there were more of us, I think you would see less of the bias, because more of me's would be extremely aggressive
Okay.
about what is going on, and there would be more challenges to charges, more challenges to stops and searches and statements that are elicited illegally. So I think there are many attorneys who don't believe there's the bias that are that clients are talking about. And if you don't believe it, then you won't be so much as an advocate to fight about it. I hope that makes sense.
Listen, I'm gonna read from Michelle's book. This
Yeah.
is it right here. All right. This is it. This is gonna say it all. All right. So this is this guy saying, I had an assistant US attorney who wanted to drop the gun charge against the defendant in a case in which there were no extenuating circumstances. I asked, why do you want to drop the gun offense? He said he's a rural guy and grew up on a farm. The gun he had with him was a rifle. He's a good old boy, and all good old boys have rifles. And it's not like he was a gun toting drug dealer, but he was a gun toting drug dealer. Exactly.
Mhm. Yes. Yes, that happens a lot. Let me give you an example. You know, there are people who get pulled over and charged with DWIs, right? DUIs, DWIs. But just think about people, how many white people in those rural communities who are driving intoxicated and the cop drives them home,
Yeah.
takes them home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Or, that white kid who's caught shoplifting, cop takes them home. But if they're a Black kid, they're going to get charged,
Yeah.
you know? So it happens. it,
All the time. That's why I
it
feel like
happens so much.
it's important to have this conversation because we there's a stigma attached to being a felon,
Yes.
no matter how small or how large your crime was, whether it was a crime of necessity,
Hmm.
because I feel like most of the felonies that Black people do, because of the way the laws are written, there are felonies, are survival. And again, not forgiving anyone for stealing and shoplifting and all that stuff, because that's all wrong.
Yeah.
However, there's a reason. Usually there's a reason. And I
And we're
feel like we need to give people a little bit more grace, but I don't know that that's ever going to happen
and
because
we're talking about we're mainly talking about adults, but just think of how much it starts in juvenile court
yeah.
with our kids. And it
Yes.
happens a lot with our children.
Yeah.
Look, and I'm not going to name any names, but these kids, if they take a, a fake gun, and when I say fake gun, I'm talking about like water gun, a black water gun to school in their backpack, and they're getting charged with a felony. Just think about the mental impact that has
Wait,
on, yeah.
they're
And
charging kids with a felony for bringing a water gun to school because
oh,
it
oh,
looks like a real gun.
yes, yes. Now, when kids or when parents buy these, and I tell parents, don't buy that for your
Yeah, I
kid.
never did that.
There's a orange little plastic plug at the end. A lot of kids remove that, and there's a little orange plastic mechanism at the top. If you take both of those pieces off, it resembles a gun. And even though they will know, the school official will know it's a water gun, they consider it a replica. Yeah.
No, see, these are the things that I don't understand how that happens
As young as
behind our
12.
backs.
As young
Behind,
as
like, this is
12.
behind our backs. And these are in our schools, the
Yeah.
schools that we should be controlling, right?
As young as 12,
That's
13 years
crazy.
old. Yeah.
That's crazy.
hmm Just think of
Okay.
just think of what they're doing to that child mentally.
And the parents who now have to go through court, like whatever comes with being charged with a
Yes.
felony, carrying a water gun at school, that is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we, so this is these are the questions that I have for you. How does that change? Because I feel like once a law is made, even Congress is not willing to go back and change it. Like, all the bad laws that Clinton did and Reagan did and Nixon did and the Bushes did, against crime and war on drugs and all the stuff that made crack cocaine different than powder cocaine. Like, how do all of these things get changed? What do
Here-
we do?
Here's just my 2 cents.
Okay,
I
give
think
me 3
one
cents.
I think one of the ways we need to deal with those cases is we need to start at the school level,
Okay,
because and I get why the teachers are stressed, and I get why they feel like something has to be done. But teachers can be pretty hard on these kids. The principal, the school officials, they really have a zero tolerance for guns. And I understand it 100% with everything that we've seen. But I think that if you have a toy gun or a replica, I think that there needs to be programming to teach the kids and the parents why gun violence is so prevalent, why it's wrong, and what we can do about it, instead of just pushing them to the juvenile system,
right.
because the juvenile system is so hard on our children.
Yeah,
They're going to encounter a probation officer who more than likely won't give a damn about them. They're going to encounter different judges. Now, Minnesota, especially Hennepin County, there's a push to keep the same judge with the child to create some consistency, because they're already scared and you're putting them through these different hoops with different individuals. And for a child, that's a lot. But I think there should be more diversion for the kids, because if they don't understand, you could change the whole trajectory of a child's life by charging them with a felony at an early age. And I think that's where we need to make a lot of changes with these children.
wow. But that's work that you do outside of your practice, right?
Yeah.
That is a passion that you and your husband share.
Yes. Yes. Helping juveniles. Yes.
So how do we support that effort? Because in this entire conversation we've talked about a lot, but it's important, number one, that we understand what a felony is, how easy anyone could get a felony, and how quickly it can change your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also understanding that our children are being charged with felonies,
Yes.
and
At
they're
an
not
alarming rate.
at an alarming rate, and they're not on the street corner selling drugs. They're not doing those things
Right.
to get a felony,
Right. Right.
but the stigma and everything else that comes with it. So how do we support you in your effort? Tell us a little bit, if you can, about your efforts in that arena, and then how we can help you.
One of the things I do is, with my husband, we mentor a lot of kids. And I teach a lot of kids about what it's like to be a lawyer. Um, William Mitchell, um, one of the programs they used to do, it's called the Field Program, FLL, Futures
Yes.
in Learning and Law. And I would ask people to really donate to that program at William Mitchell, which is now called Mitchell Hamlin.
Yeah. Did
Um,
they combine schools?
they did combine
Okay.
schools. I teach in that program. I haven't done it in a while because of COVID, but shortly before COVID, funding was a big issue. So what this program does is it takes kids from high schools. So for 2 weeks every summer, and they would get free transportation. They would get, free bus passes. We would feed them, and they would go to law school for 2 weeks. They will receive one credit towards their high school credits, and at the end of and like I said, we feed them, and they do tour. They take tours to court, um, but they're learning about the law.
Yes.
They're in actual classes for criminal law, constitutional law, and at the end of this, they do a big trial, mock trial. So they're
Hamlin
either
has an awesome mock trial set.
yes,
Like, I fell in love with it. Like, ooh.
yes, yes,
Yes.
and I'm also a mock trial judge. But in this program, I teach one of the core classes. Um, but they're either prosecution or defense. And what's really nice is their parents come watch, and their parents bring their siblings, and they get to watch these kids do a trial. And it's so many kids, they're in different, classrooms, but it is wonderful. And it does something great for these kids that they are actually in law school and they're becoming lawyers.
Wow.
So I would ask people to really donate to that program because there are so many kids from both Minneapolis, Coon Rapids, and St. Paul that really, really love this program. And we do wonders for these kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't know why that was not what I was expecting you to say.
Now, and I'll be teaching this summer at Mitchell Hamlin, but I'll be teaching legal writing for regular law students, but I would encourage them to contact Mitchell Hamlin and see how they can donate to the Phil program.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I worked for I think maybe I told you this, but I worked for Don Lewis
Uh-huh.
at his law firm.
Mhm.
It was so great. They were like family to me. They were just the nicest people that I met when I first moved to Minnesota because I went right to school as soon as I moved there.
Yeah.
And so I started just as their front desk receptionist. I was the
Oh,
receptionist
wow.
while I was in school. And
Yeah.
then once I graduated and became a paralegal, Don was like, come on, I got you. And so I got a chance to work on the case when the NAACP sued the Minneapolis public schools.
Uh-huh.
Very eye-opening. That was a very eye-opening case.
Uh-huh.
But I had fun. I had a great time being a paralegal. One day I wanted to be an attorney. And then I was like, nah. Once I worked in the law firm, I was
Right.
like, nah, I'm gonna let other better people do this because I am too emotional. Like I'm like, what kind of law would I do? I can't do family court. It's like I would just be in the court crying. Ah, Your Honor, this family is just going through so much. I'm too emotional. Like even as a firefighter, I would have to come back to the fire station and go cry because it was just so much. So yeah, no, I was like, I don't even know what.
No, you got to do it. And here's the thing: people wonder what type of background they need to go to law school. You can go to law school with any background.
Yeah.
Every background is helpful.
Yeah.
You can go to law school at any age. When I graduated, there was a guy in my class. He was 72 years old, and he went back. He said he just always wanted to be a lawyer. Um,
Wow.
and even
Hey,
today,
Pumps.
yeah, you can look. You can go to law school only on the weekends. They have a program you can do on weekend, and you can also do it. You can also go to law school in the hybrid program. So the hybrid program is, part in class and part online. So what that means is you would have to come to the law school, I believe it's 6 times in 1 year.
Whoa.
And I think you
Okay.
just have to come for like a couple days or something like that and sit in class. Otherwise, you can just be, in your city.
Okay.
Mitchell Hamlin uh, is the first law school to allow inmates to become students. And here's what's really interesting. So I saw that they were doing this program, right?
Okay.
And they sent out the newsletter not too long ago saying we have our first inmate as a law student. And I looked, and the inmate was a defendant from my first murder trial almost
What?
20 years in 2003. Yeah, 20 years ago. Mhm.
What?
Yeah. And he is actually getting out of prison soon. Um, he was sentenced to 20 years, so he'll be getting out, I think, at the end of this year or early next year. Yeah.
Oh my
I
goodness.
I was so shocked.
Oh
But
my goodness. That's
yes,
awesome.
yes. So I see there's a question.
Yeah, Tall Pumps
Um,
wants to know if you have to have an undergraduate degree to even apply.
yes. So you have to have a 4-year degree. So many people go to these schools that we call a career college, like Brown College or Everest College. You can't um, you can't have one of those degrees. But
Okay.
here's what you can do. You can go to a community college and get your associates, and then take those credits and transfer them to a 4-year university. That way you only have like a couple years, a year and a half to do.
Yeah.
So if your grades aren't high enough to get into a 4-year university, go to a community college and get those generals out of the way and
I
just
say
knock
do
it out
that
of the park.
anyway. Yeah,
Yes,
I say do that anyway because it's less
yes,
expensive.
yes,
Get those core classes at a community college and then transfer
yes.
to
And
but
then
that's the great thing
transfer.
about Minnesota though. They make it really easy.
They do.
I don't know that all states are that easy.
They do.
But
Now, here, if you go to a community college out of state, you can transfer those credits here and do the rest of your education online.
yeah. Oh, okay.
So, like with with the U of M system, I know they can do that. And I think like UW Duluth will do it.
Okay.
St. Cloud, you can also um, do it, complete it online. Now, um, the writing piece is really important. Um, a lot of people kind of get tied to what they write in English in undergraduate, and they carry that to law school. I tell you that to say, just do really well, but then when you get to law school, forget everything you learned, because they're going to teach you the opposite. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
writing those long sentences, they're going to teach you how to condense it, you know,
Yeah.
and cut it in half. But when I was in college, let me tell you, there were students majored in bowling. Okay, just really just something really stupid, right? But they
Just to
did
get
it
into just to get into
just
law school.
yes, so they would have a high
To
GPA.
have a high GPA.
And you know what? It worked back then and it still works today.
That's So it was so funny because when I did my research,
Mhm,
because my parents made me do research all the time.
mhm.
So when I told them I wanted to be an attorney, they're like, "Well, you need to do the research and understand what your undergrad's going to be because you have to
Yeah.
do it the right way." What do most attorneys do? And so back then, most attorneys were engineers. So then I got interested in engineering. That's how my mind works. It's like, oh, civil engineering. This could be really fun.
Let me tell you, I went to law school with nurses. There were nurses, there were people who worked in IT,
Yeah.
because Mitchell also had and still has an evening program that is structured just for people who work during the day. So, one of the other things with going to law school is the LSAT, okay?
Yes.
Because you want to score well on that LSAT. Let me tell you what I did, okay? Because remember, I was a single parent and I was on welfare and I was still getting food stamps. Remember the paper, the little book?
Yes. The
Yeah,
different colors.
yeah. I was on welfare. I had Section 8. Um, so I really um, just really focused on my education to get off of welfare. So
Yes.
I didn't have the money to take some of these really fancy courses, right? So I took I took my time studying. I didn't do really well at first. So one day I went to the school store and I got the Princeton review. I paid $20 for the book and my score jumped 25 points
Okay.
because I learned some really great tools um, to do better. Like, for instance, I wasn't good at logic games. That's a part of the LSAT.
Yeah.
So, what the book taught me was to skip a whole section, one of the questions, just skip it, and then just spend more time on the other ones.
Yeah.
But before you go into that test, you need to pick one letter, and that's going to be your default. See, so many people take a test and if they don't know, they just start guessing and picking letters. You
Right.
can't do that. You pick one letter and stick to it.
And then if
So,
you don't know the answer, then you just always pick that letter.
exactly. Exactly. So your
Very
default needs to
interesting.
be C or D, and you stick with that letter because you have more chances of getting that answer right
Right. If you stick with this.
instead of just jumping around. So one
That would have
section,
been very
I
good
just,
information to
yeah,
have when I was still taking tests.
exactly. 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 Exactly.
Top
Yeah.
Pumps, does your daughter want to be an attorney? So Top Pump said that let me just go back and read this one. Yes, and do your research as
Yes.
all prerequisite courses aren't transferable.
Exactly.
I think it's a scam
Exactly.
on the educational system. Yes, it is. My daughter spent a semester at a community college and they wouldn't accept her classes at the university she graduated from. And see, that's the like Top Pumps here in Minnesota. I keep saying here,
Yes.
I'm not in Minnesota anymore, but in Minnesota, everything is connected. Minnesota school
Yes.
systems are all connected. So you go to a community college and your classes are going to be transferable. And that's the awesome thing
Yes.
about Minnesota. And I don't know that all states are like that.
Well, here's one of the things that Tall Pumps is referring to that happens here is some of these colleges who label themselves as community colleges are not. They
Okay.
are actually career colleges.
Okay.
Those credits don't transfer.
Okay.
But someplace here like Normandale,
Yes.
all of those transfer because,
Yeah.
like you said, they are connected.
Yeah.
But here, if you go to, let's say, Rasmussen College,
Not the same. Yeah.
not the same.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Everest Community College or something like
Yeah.
that.
Not the
Those
same.
won't transfer. But
No.
if you go here, like St. Paul, I think it's St. Paul College,
Same.
those
Okay. I
transfer.
went to North Hennepin Community College,
Yes.
and I went to North Hennepin Technical Community College for my firefighting stuff, and so I have lots of credits. I have not finished my bachelor's yet,
Hmm.
but I am going to. As soon as I get moved and settled, I've already been in conversation with Fisk University
Oh, wow.
has they have you know how a lot of schools are doing these let's take your life experience along with everything else,
Yes.
and we're going to make sure that you get a degree that's going to fit what you've been doing in your life. And so that's what I'm going to do. And at Fisk University, I'm like, I'm going to have a degree from an HBCU.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
I'm looking forward to doing that.
I hope you go to law school. One of the classes that I'm trying to structure now is a class, it's a couple of them,
Thank
uh,
you.
One is
Egg
Black
waffles.
family in the law, and the other one is Black art in the law. So
Yes.
Black art in the law will um, will be structured a lot around First Amendment and felony convictions
Okay.
or being charged with crimes, and that's gonna talk a lot about rap music.
Oh, okay.
Yes, rap
That should be
music.
fun.
Yes, rap music and artists' work, because Black people, we're so creative, right?
Yes, we are.
We have many ways to express our artistic side or our artistic influence.
Yeah.
But sometimes white people or the criminal justice system can deem that as a crime. Look at the rappers in Atlanta who are in prison,
Yes.
so
Yes. For
yeah,
their lyrics.
yes,
I'm just learning that, like I'm telling you, it's like you've got to be kidding. How is this crap happening in this
exactly.
world? And we just sitting by, like, yeah, we're okay with that. As long as we're equal now. Yeah, that's like, are you effing kidding me? I'm trying not to curse.
Yeah,
There's been lots of times I've wanted to curse on this show
yeah,
today.
yeah, yeah. And if you look back on Luke, remember Luke,
Yeah,
rapper from Miami, look at
yeah,
how much trouble he got into. But then you look at other, white people in the porn industry
yeah.
who were not prosecuted. But
Yeah.
there's lots of facets to that. Look at NWA, look at Public
Right.
Enemy. You know, when you're
Yes.
analyzing their lyrics and how they were criminalized, there's a lot behind it. I hope there will be. Oh, I'm sure my proposal,
Yes.
my agenda will be revised a lot by the school, and that's fine. But I hope that you know uh, I have a waiting list, of students to get in my class. But I think it will be quite entertaining because I will be playing lyrics,
Oh,
showing,
that'll
showing
be
a few
fun.
videos.
Right.
Yes,
So next week, Big Ant is going to be on my show. You remember Big Ant from KMOJ? I don't know how long
yes,
he's going to
I've
be.
heard of him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's my guest next week. We're going to be talking about all that.
good, good.
should be
I
should
hope
be
so.
fun. All right,
I hope so.
so like let's see if we can run through some of this other stuff that I wanted to share. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to kind of make the shows a little bit more fun and interesting, and use different things to kind of keep the
Oh,
conversation going.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it looks like we have a question from Mr. Revering.
Oh, well, I don't see a question from Mr. Revering.
I
Where
see at
is
the
it?
bottom.
Oh, there it is. I see it. I see it. All right. How does Nardo Wick contribute to today's your
So-
auto correct the rap scene
yes.
not spelled correctly.
So we had an interesting conversation at home
Okay.
last week about rappers and their lyrics. Um, his position is that he believes it contributes to juvenile crime and some adult crime because of the lyrics. My view is that he's expressing what he sees, not necessarily that these are the crimes that they are doing, but it's just like Tall Pumps just said. It is for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
I don't think rappers are creating these songs to encourage individuals to actually go out and commit crimes. I don't believe that. Now, um, we know that Nardo Wick has been charged with crimes, okay? But I believe that his music is just an expression of his environment.
Yeah.
And I think that other young people can relate to that. It is not to encourage, entice, or tell individuals to go out to commit crimes. I
Right.
simply don't believe that. And this is to me a First Amendment issue. This is something
Yes.
that he is free to speak on under the Constitution. And I don't think he should be silenced by the criminal justice system. That's just
That's my joke though. You have, this is America. You're free to say whatever you want to say, but you do have the right to remain silent because we are going to use what you say against you.
unfortunately.
So yeah, say what you want to say. However,
say what you want to say.
We gonna throw your ass in jail if you talk about killing somebody. It's like, really, it's there are just so many things that are happening right under our noses that I don't know that we really understand what the repercussions are gonna look like if we don't stop this train now. Like, there's got to be a time where we stop the train, or it's just going to continue to run us all over. And so what do you do, right? How do you get everyone to say, listen, we got to all get on the same page here somehow. And I don't really care if you prefer to be called Black or African American. And, I don't really care, if we have differences, because the one thing that we do know is, number one, we need to take control of our futures, because we don't have control over anything. No ownership. We're not educating our kids. We're not, our elected officials are not doing what they should be doing for us. Like, there is, besides the fact that, we have lots of athletes and entertainers who are making really good money. Right? Last week, I feel like it was last week or the week before last, when you talk about Black businesses in this country, 2% of businesses in this country are owned by Black people. Most of them are sole proprietorships. They're not really doing much towards the economy, right? Even in Atlanta, Calandra, only 7.4% of the businesses are owned by Black people.
That is unreal.
And that's the Mecca. That's supposed to be our shining example of Black excellence. 7.4%. That's it. It's like, we must do better in all areas. And that begins with starting at how the criminal justice system is affecting our families, our sons and daughters, our grandkids, our neighbors, our communities. At some point, we just have to be able to say enough is enough.
Exactly.
But I don't know, Calandra. I don't feel like that feeling is shared.
I don't think it's shared either. And I don't think it's going to get any better. It's going to get much worse before it gets better, unfortunately.
We're going to talk about that at the end. Because I've already had you on here. I told you it wasn't going to be 3 hours, and we're already coming up on 2. So let's talk about Brain Injury Awareness Month. And I know this is a really random conversation.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I was able to do when I was a firefighter is talk about brain injury. There was a time I was a chief. I was able to become a chief of EMS officer, chief EMS officer. But I learned a lot about brain injuries. That's why even as an adult, you will find me wearing a helmet. You're going to find me wearing a helmet when I'm riding my bike, because it's so easy. It's so easy to get a brain injury. And most of us probably have had one and we don't even know it. Like, I remember a time when I was a kid, I fell. And I remember just my head was hurting so bad after I fell. And I probably did some damage. And like, we have kids who do that stuff all the time. And the smallest piece of damage to your brain here or there can affect how your child learns, can affect how your child behaves. We think it's red Kool-Aid. They probably bumped their head somewhere. Like, seriously, it is really that serious and important that we start taking our brain injuries a little bit more seriously. So this is just a really quick video. Let's see if I can get it going here.
Disability and death in kids ages 0 to 4.
Eye-opening statistics like that are why every March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. It's a time to talk about these types of injuries and also to show that many and how many can actually be prevented. So joining us now to talk more about this is Dr. Mason Cabrihe, Medical Director of the Neurosurgery Program at Children's Minnesota. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Good morning.
Okay, so let's start with this. A lot of people, when they hear the term traumatic brain injury, they think of some type of catastrophic incident, right? But we know that that's not always the case, right?
Exactly. Not necessarily. As a matter of fact, concussions, like we had talked about, are the most common cause of traumatic brain injury. So concussions, as we know, can happen from sports, accidents, or falls. And with concussions, what happens is the brain, you can get a blow to the head or the body, and that causes disruption to the brain. And it may or may not lead to loss of consciousness. So even if your athlete doesn't pass out, that doesn't mean that they didn't have a concussion. And symptoms of a concussion can happen right after the injury, or even days or hours or days afterwards. The symptoms like headaches, dizziness, balance issues, and we all know our kids well. So if your kid takes a blow to the head or body and they're just not acting themselves, think of concussion and seek out a professional opinion.
The statistic about traumatic brain injuries in that 0 to 4 though age group, it's always scary to me. That age group always has been scary to me because they toddle around, they bang their head on. We removed our table out of our living room at one point because they just kept banging their head, and I wonder. When you have those kinds of injuries for those little ones, can something little trigger that, or is it something where they're falling down the stairs? What's going on in that smaller age group?
Well, it certainly could trigger that. I mean, little kids they're designed to take hits, especially as they're learning to walk and those kind of things. But really, if they have a injury or fall and they're not acting themselves, that's when they start to worry. So if they're having balance issues, if they're walking and now they're having a hard time walking, if they're having sensitivity to light or sound, if they're vomiting and they're doing okay and they were not sick before the injury, those are warning signs for concussion and where you should seek out a medical professional.
Walk us through, I was going to say, paint a picture for us. Show us what happens if a person has a concussion.
Right here. This is the part right here.
What happens to them? If you can, really
yes,
kind of
they
demonstrate
do.
for us.
Absolutely. So what happens is you can think of a skull as a bowl. In this bowl, the brain sits in here, and unfortunately, the brain doesn't have a seatbelt, and so the brain is sitting in water inside this bowl here. So when there's an injury to the head, the skull stops, but the brain doesn't, and the brain rubs and smashes against parts of the skull, and that's where you get those injuries.
Yeah, and go for it.
Yeah, we were talking about if I always heard that if you have a head injury, you're not supposed to fall asleep or lay down. Is that still the case, or?
Depends on what the symptoms are. If you're having symptoms that are worrisome for concussion or for traumatic brain injury, absolutely, that's very true. You should fall asleep. So sleepiness, increased sleepiness, or lack of difficulty falling asleep are signs of traumatic brain injury themselves. So it's more of a constellation of signs. So if it's 2 p.m. and you're normally wide awake, but you just had a head injury and you want to go to sleep and you're having a hard time staying awake, that's the worrisome sign.
I have a hockey player, so concussions are always on my mind here. What happens though when you get to the point where you're at multiple concussions? Because we've seen that happen with our student athletes.
Absolutely. Multiple concussions are really severe because 1 + 1 does not equal 2 when it comes to brain injury. So you really want to be careful. Hockey's close and dear to my heart too. I have hockey players at home too. So really for the folks at home and for the coaches, I would say if there's any doubt, then sit the kids out until they're cleared by a medical professional.
Yeah, and they're doing that so much better than when we were growing up and even from 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
So
Dr. Correa.
Yeah. So again, there are so many different ways that you can injure your brain that I just felt like it was important to talk about this today. And people that we know in our family that's had a stroke. And then I also, Calandra, think about people, young men who have been injured because of gangbanging, whether they were shot in the head and survived, or, you see these fights now with our young kids that are just beating each other up. Like there are so many ways that you can injure your brain.
Yeah. Gunshot violence, being shot in the head. It's a huge issue in the justice system. And talking about having a long week, I had a client who was shot in the head a couple weeks ago in the frontal lobe area. And it is important to talk about this because what then happens to the criminal case? Because at this point, he's not going to be able to communicate with me.
Right.
So there are ways in the system to kind of deal with that. We call it a Rule 20, Rule 2001 and 2002. That's a competency evaluation. So on one hand, are they able to communicate with me? And on the other hand, are they able to understand what happened at the time of the offense? So traumatic brain injuries, those issues, they do affect us in the criminal justice system.
Yes.
And sometimes they've had a brain injury prior to being charged with a crime, and it may have caused them to commit the crime because they don't have the capacity to make a good decision, or they don't have the cognitive ability to understand what they're doing. Some years ago, I used to be part of a panel where I was appointed as an attorney to represent people who did have brain injuries or they were not competent to proceed. Um, do you remember Liam Nielsen?
Of
Or you know
course.
who he is, the actor.
Yeah.
His wife died
Yes.
because of a traumatic brain injury on the ski
Yes.
trip.
Yep.
I think she was injured, and then I think she laid down, and they didn't think it was as serious.
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
But yeah, traumatic
Yes.
brain injuries are huge.
They're huge. And tall pumps, yes. Thank you so much for having the conversation. This is important, especially for
Yes.
us who have children playing contact sports. And I tell you, I feel like most sports are contact.
Like football.
Football
is a huge one with juveniles because
basketball.
what I explain to parents is when I've had several football players, when their head, if you picture their head in a helmet and the brain is being hit back and forth in their brain.
Yeah.
When they're charged with offenses, they can't really reason kind of what happened or why, because that brain is being knocked around for years. And then for kids, when they finish football season, guess what? They then go to wrestling.
Okay.
Or they then go to basketball. Yes.
Yeah.
Parents keep them in sports, and many times parents don't consider that brain being hit around. Yes.
We just want to keep them busy and out of trouble. Yes. And sports seems to be what our go-to is. But I do know, I remember reading somewhere that soccer really has the most concussions. Soccer, even more than football.
Yes.
If you could believe that. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about that because our brains are just so important, and it's just the smallest thing. And again, it affects so much. And when you have, little kids who don't really understand that, and then they grow up and they have other issues in life, but you don't think about that. Right. And I learned because I read this book called My Stroke of Insight. It was this lady wrote a book. She was a neuroscientist that had a stroke. And so when she was going through her stroke in her brain, she was looking at it from a neuroscientist's way of viewing things. And so the book is amazing. If you've ever heard of it, My Stroke of Insight, an amazing book. But yeah, just so many things. But I just wanted to touch on that for a minute. So you know what else is today?
What else is today?
Today is the Queen's birthday.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So maybe we won't talk about Barbara Jordan, but we have to talk about the Queen. So let me get my stuff together here. Actually, you know what? I was gonna do kind of this little reading thing when I play this video, but I think we should just talk about her while we play it because the Queen is just the Queen. And so I had to take a minute to say happy birthday to her. Now I just have to find the damn video. All right, let's try it with music first. you hear me? Can you hear me now? I'm trying to unmute us, but I don't think I can. Unmute yourself, Calandra. There
All
you
right.
go.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted now.
Perfect.
We're gonna have to play this twice.
Mhm.
Cause I remember growing up with Queen, right?
Yeah.
Like she was unlike anything that we'd ever seen before. And just her music, right? Yes, Dana Owens. I know, me too. Top Pumps, I am still crushing on this woman to this day. I will always have a crush on the Queen. Like she went from hip hop artist to actress, to phenomenal in the beauty, like just so many things this woman has done. She can rap you into the ground, and she can sing opera until you cry. Like she is amazing. I just love her. I love her. And today is her birthday. Of all days when you come on, Calandra, so we get to see the beautiful Dana Owens. And again, I had this whole thing, I was going to read while, it was playing in the background. But it's like, let's just talk about her. What do you think about her, Calandra?
Oh, I love Queen Latifah. I love Queen Latifah. I remember listening to her music growing up, and she's one of my favorites.
Absolutely. And I feel like she didn't do a whole lot of television, but as I was doing this research, there was some things that they had. I found this website that has a lot of different like quotes that she did. That's in the chat too. So if you're looking in the chat, there's a link to Queen Latifah digital discography, and then like this page that I found that has quotes from her and little things that's happened in her life. And like I loved her, but I learned so much more while I was doing this work. Did you know that this is her? This is a new character of hers.
So the one in the picture in the middle, right?
Yeah. I didn't know that was her. I was like, who is this woman? that popped up when I was looking for my queen.
I watch Living Single all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And The Equalizer is a show she is rocking now. Yes, Tall Pumps.
Yes.
I have not been able to get so much into The Equalizer yet, but I'm definitely going to, because it'll just have to be a binge thing for me at this point. I feel like is it the second season, right? Tall Pumps. It's been on for a little while now.
Yeah.
But yeah, just awesome. So let me just show you. I'm gonna show you just real quick. Queen Latifah. Let's see. I hope they let me do it. So this is it right here, where you can it's her little biography. Tells you all about her little mini bio, trivia, which look how much trivia there is, and then all of her music and films, and there's a link to all of them, and like her personal quotes. I'm hoping you guys can see this. I'm not even paying attention. Oh yes, okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. Like this is the site right here, and again, it's in the chat. The link to this is in the chat, so you'll be able to take a look at it later. But yeah, we had to celebrate the Queen today. Oh, here comes, hold on, Barbara Jordan, which you're not going to do. I don't think we have time for her today. So just real quick though, Calandra, are you like totally honored that I think of Barbara Jordan when I think of you?
I am because I know a little bit about Barbara Jordan's history, about her she was the only, even though she was governor for a day, right?
Yeah, for a day.
One
yeah.
day, yes. Yes. She was the longest Black woman in Congress. She was first, right?
She was the first, yes. And she was the first that was elected to the Texas Senate. She was elected to the Senate first in 1966, and then she went on to serve as Congress. Did the so I had the speech. Yeah, anyways, I'll have to do her another time, because I want to get really quick back into the conversation, because I want to make sure that we leave everyone with some really good nuggets today. And so one of the other things that's happening today is, or not today, but on the 21st, March 21st, is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination.
Mm.
Let me say that again. The International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. This is a United Nations, a kind of a United Nations thing, right? So that they celebrate this every year.
Just because of where they come from, what they look like, or what they believe in.
The link to this is also in the chat.
Okay.
No.
But I wanted to really talk about this, Calandra, because Ben Crump has been going to the UN now because of George Floyd, because of Tyre Nichols. And this is something, again, I'm just learning, that Ben Crump is now taking these cases to the UN as a global request to take a closer look at America and their racial discrimination practices, especially when it comes to policing. Again, just learning this would be nice if, other people, news people could like talk about this stuff. But I want to talk about that a little bit. How do you feel about that approach that he's taking with these cases?
I hope it's effective. I think that these cases need as much exposure as possible. And I'm glad he's doing it. And I hope that people really take note. Now that we have body cams and more people are recording things that happen, I hope that people start to think about how many lives, Black lives, have been taken and they were not believed, and how much has happened without recordings. There were many times people have reported police brutality, and guess what? Nobody believed them. People have always put police officers on a pedestal and that they have the highest moral regard. That's not true. When I'm questioning jurors, I ask them, will you believe an officer just because he's a police officer? If they say yes, they're out of there. But if they say no, I may consider keeping them. So I hope that Ben is giving this information to give the public a new perspective on how the police are treating people and how they aren't so innocent and how racism is embedded in our system. So
Racism is embedded everywhere, that is a great question for jurors, right? Tall Pumps, when she said that, I was like, oh, wow, you can actually ask that question that directly.
Yes, and I do every time.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. But excuse me. Tall Pumps, I lost my thought with reading Tall Pumps' message because I really lost it. I lost it that fast. It'll come back though.
Yeah.
It'll come back. This is what I was going to ready to say, because so funny. I was watching Trevor Noah yesterday, and he had this long joke about the Queen passing. And, his thing was, how do you expect for the oppressors to be sad when the people who are being oppressed to be sad when the oppressor is gone? Like, that's just not going to happen.
Right.
And so when you think about how slavery and the African diaspora, how we got shipped off to so many different places, the fact that we now have this global celebration to eliminate and eradicate something that the people who probably started this celebration started in the first place, a part of me is like, do I really feel like that's going to be effective? Because they know what the hell's going on over here. Do we really gotta? That's how I feel about that.
I don't think it will be effective, but I think that it will succeed in bringing awareness. But will it go any further than that? No.
Who's going to bring awareness to? Because we don't even know he's doing it over here. No one's telling us.
Yeah.
I didn't know he did this for George Floyd.
I didn't either until you just told me.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So I guess it will bring awareness to people who will listen, people who will be there. But for the rest of us, yeah, I don't think it'll be effective. Yeah.
But
there's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work.
Mhm.
There's a lot of work, Calandra. And I am so excited that defendants have you on their side.
Thank you.
Because compassion and empathy is lacking.
Yeah.
Clearly, we've learned that there's not a lot of compassion and empathy in the lives or in the hearts of white people.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem to matter to them anything that we say or do to let them know that, hey, y'all got some stuff that you need to fix here. Because we're tired of being the problem.
Yeah.
We're tired. I'm tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of being the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but let's take just a couple of minutes so I can get you out of here. I have just a few questions I want to ask you as we leave. And the first one is really very serious. I found this. I can't remember where it was. I found this. And do you think that talking about slavery makes white people feel guilty and Black people feel like victims?
No. I think that, at least here in Minnesota, I think that it makes some white people uncomfortable. I don't think it makes Black people feel like victims. And I think it makes other white people consider why it's important to bring it up. But it makes a lot of white people feel uncomfortable because a lot of white people feel like they shouldn't be held responsible for what happened. And they see it as, it's not me. I wasn't there. And they feel like something is being projected on them that they have nothing to do with. If they are not racist, they feel like I, as a person, should not be held accountable. And they may not want to talk about it. They feel like, why talk about something that I don't have anything to do with? That's their perspective. That's their perspective.
And so in my brain, of course, that's not the correct perspective to have. Right. Like at some point, some accountability has to happen. I was doing some research, and America did finally apologize for slavery. I think it was 1998. It may have been even later than that. It might have been in the 2000s when we finally at least got an apology for slavery. And seeing how we're only 50 something years removed from Jim Crow and civil rights and being able to vote, I just wonder, do you think that America will ever reach its promise?
You know, I think so, but I don't think you and I will be alive. We have a very long road ahead of us. Yeah.
All right. So
we're still dealing with the first and only Black people to do this or that. Or, we have a long road.
That's true. We still are in the midst of firsts.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I'm 49 years old. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Tall pumps. They did. It's interesting that other Holocaust people hold on, let me pin this because I want that to stay there for a minute. All right, they did. Interesting that other Holocaust people are repaired. Yeah, but Black folks we're still waiting for that, for them to cut the check, tall pumps. We're still waiting. And at this point, I don't know that even giving everyone a certain amount of money is going to work, because everything's still going to be the same. We're just going to spend our money. It's going to go back into the hands of the white people because we don't own anything.
Correct.
We definitely have some work to do.
Yeah.
To get to that point.
Yes.
So tell me, we're going to end it a little on a lighter note.
Mhm.
What are you most grateful for?
I am most grateful for my son, because having a child really really made me aware of what I needed to do as a parent. I feel like having a child made me get myself together and get back on the right track. But most importantly, he made me aware of the need to help little boys, little Black boys. And as an adult, he made me aware of the fight that needs to happen for Black gay males. So he continues to be the wind underneath my wings and give me a reason to fight for our people.
That's
Being a
awesome.
parent, yes, of a Black man. Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 29 today.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to meeting him too.
Yeah.
My son just turned 32 on the 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
he's a Pisces.
wonderful people they are.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Oh, you're a Pisces too. That's right. I forgot.
February 25th. Yes.
Yeah, it's like I remember you just had a birthday too.
Yeah.
So many Pisces. I know so many Pisces. I don't know what happened.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, that is totally awesome. So this is your chance right now to give the audience the last thing that you want to leave them with. What do you want to leave our audience with today?
I would say, think about how you're going to leave your legacy. You know, if you had a year to live or 5 years to live, what would you want people to remember you as? And I would hope that would be fighting for the cause, making this world a safer place, and a better place, and a place where everyone can be treated equal. So think about what you can do.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you for having me.
Hey, while I have you, I want you to commit to something else for me.
What is that?
So, I get the opportunity real quick to tell people who are listening right now that, there's some great episodes that are coming up.
Okay.
And so I've really been planning kind of the way I've been scheduling my podcast to lead up to, and I always hate to use the word celebration. So the commemoration of George Floyd's death there.
Uh-huh.
May 25th is the day, but the show that I wanted, the day of the show is May 20th. And
Okay.
so I've already gotten Cynthia from the NAACP to commit to be on
Okay.
that day, and Tyrone's coming on. And so I want to see if I can get the honorable. And I'm saying that because I know you said you're not going to run for judgeship again, but I have a feeling maybe one day you will.
I just might. If Mark Revering has a choice, I would, but we'll see.
Listen, you're still young. Like you have another 10 years that you can be in the private sector because you're going to have like $50 million by then to run anyway.
Right.
Lord have mercy. So I have a feeling that you will be the honorable Revering at some point.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. And yes, I will commit.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We will. I'm so excited. I've got, and so even, I don't know if you listened to the beginning, but I have the NAACP is coming on
Okay.
April 29th. I've got the president from St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Phoenix.
Okay.
I've reached out to a few others, so I want a nice little panel of leaders, because I just feel like the NAACP should be more integral in the fight that we have every day.
I would
And
agree.
I don't think they are.
Yeah, I don't think they are either.
So I want to talk to them about it and really challenge them. Like even just learning the history of the NAACP, first of all, was really started by a lot of white people and then a few Black people. But considering the times, 1909, right? Like Black people really couldn't start much on their own anyway. But just, learn more about the history. And I'm very interested about the conversation. But then I also have council members from, I've reached out to Ferguson, haven't heard from them yet, but I've got council members from here, Tempe, Chandler, reaching out to Minneapolis, haven't heard back from them yet, but I'm also putting together a panel so that we can talk about getting more involved locally. Like, I feel like this every 4-year crap, we need to stop. You need to know who's running your city. You need to know who's running your county. And let's start there, because I speak with so many people who just don't believe in voting. I don't vote. But it's usually because of this high level that we think the president's going to solve all of our problems, and they're not. We need to keep it local. This is where it needs to be. So that's what I'm doing leading up. So now I've told you and everyone else who's listening.
All right. Well, send me an invite. I'll be there.
Awesome.
A calendar invite.
Yes.
Right,
yes. Thank you so much again. Everyone else, we're going to do some wrap. We're going to take some last minute stuff. Talk to you later, Calandra.
All right.
I'll call you later.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
All right. So before I let you guys get out of here, let me, again, if you are in a town where your NAACP is really, really strong and vibrant, and you feel like they're part of the struggle that we have in our community, please let me know. If you live in a city where you have no idea where your NAACP chapter office even is, if you don't know anyone who's involved with it, let me know. Like, let's get some comprehensive conversations going on about the NAACP before we have this show in April. So please, please, please make sure that you go to the Facebook page and let's talk about it. So there are so many podcasts out there. Thank you for choosing this one to be here with me. I trust that our conversation sparked your interest, even if just a little bit. I believe that we are at a time and in a place where we must stop and take a deep look into where we are and how we got here. Knowing our history is important. And it's time to challenge ourselves and think deeply about why we accept inequality. I had no idea that our kids were getting felonies because they're taking water guns to school that look like a real gun. They're actually calling them replicas and changing the course of our kids' life for a water gun. Why is that legal? Why is it legal to discriminate on the basis of ethnicity in our justice system? Why hasn't Congress done anything to change and fix the stuff that they have done to us? Because it really is up to Congress to do it, right? So when you ask yourself these questions, as I'm asking you, what is your answer? Is your answer, they just don't deserve any better, or they just don't want any better? I hope those aren't your answers, but if they are, then we just have some work to do. Come back next week. We're going to talk about that. But what I really just need you to do is to feel that answer that you do have, because feeling is important. We need to feel, right? So if your answer allows you to ignore or justify or accept inequality, then again, I need you back here. I'm here to take you to a place of understanding that we are all the same. And if you think that you deserve the best, then why can't we think that for everyone? So again, next week's I'm back next week. My conversation with my friend Anthony. Hold on, let me see if I can bring this flyer up, because this is going to be an awesome conversation. He's coming on. We're going to talk about what's in a word, right? What is in a word? The N word, the B word, all the other words that we throw out. We call each other terms of endearment, but these words were not meant to be pretty and nice. So we're going to talk about that. And some other stuff too. But this is going to be a real interesting conversation. Anthony and I go way back. He's a radio personality. He used to be in Minneapolis on KMOJ, which is where I met him. Now he's in Louisiana down there running stuff at his radio station. So we're going to bring him on. We're going to talk a lot about music ownership. There's some big news in music ownership that happened last week. So we're going to talk about a whole lot of stuff with Anthony next week. So please, please, please come back. And the time is different. I'm really trying to move to getting my show the same time every week so that you can rely on me being consistent. So just bear with me. But again, thank y'all for being here. I'm going to get out of here now. I'm trying to see if I'm able to raid anybody. Oh, Classics is on. And so is Diva 929. Let's go to Diva 929 today. Tall Pumps, how's that sound? The Diva 9. Let's go to Diva 9. All right, so first, and I do this all the time, first thing I have to do is put in the raid message. So if you're on Twitch, you know what this is all about. You just highlight that raid message. When we get over to Diva 929, you put it in there and stay a little while. Enjoy what she's doing. If you're on Facebook or on YouTube, then this is going to be the end of the road for you. But I recommend you come on over to Twitch and see what's going on because it's a really great community here. You can find podcasts, DJs, gamers. It's a really great place. Thank you, Top Pumps. You go ahead and get dressed. We're getting ready to raid out to Diva 929 right now. I got that raid message in there. Let me get back over here. Diva 929. We're going to start that raid. Again, thank you guys for being here with me on this Saturday. And I'll see you next week. All right? Have a good day. A good day. A good day.